Welcome everybody to another edition of New Japan 2004 here in TEW 2020 as we're continuing the second
You could
tour
have easily have taken your
of
phone
the
out of
series.
your pocket.
You fucked me.
It's going to be the Hyper Battle Tour
Yeah,
leading
I
up to the
think
King
fuck
of Sports show
You know the one on East
in
29th,
the middle
secret
of
lair?
March,
Don't know it. Nope. The three of us. You've got not oiled up.
or rather the end of March. And again, just like with the last episode, I'm not going to show you every touring show because again, lots of random six-man tags and tag matches will be kind of quickly become boring, but I will be basically showing the big shows. I think it'll probably be like 4, including the last show, probably like 5 shows to go over. I did sign some new people to add to the roster, but I mean, not a ton of people, and sort of building things up. So I want to go bit by bit to sort of remaking New Japan, not just throwing everything out with bathwater, all in one shot. But let's get rolling with our first show from beautiful Korakuen Hall in Tokyo. I'm starting with our opener, as in the abysmal match, Hiroshi Tanahashi and Hirooki Goto defeat Nago and Yanomoto in 10:31. When Saito pins Yanomoto with the senton bomb, decent one for our veteran, teaming up with Goto. This gets a 24. Yanomoto is still injured. I forgot that as I booked him. Goto gets a 20. No, Goto gets a 30. Saito gets a 38 because he's old. Yanomoto gets a 20. And Nago gets a 20. And yeah, usual pre-show thing, but this one gets a 24. Again, gotta build these people up to get the crowd used to them. Then we go to our first debut, as in about the Terrible Wrestling announces Karate Asami Kodaka, who basically was a sort of like a mid-card guy, various promotions in New Japan in this area, in Japan in this time period. Was available, he has some decent stats, so figure bring him and see how he does. And in this match, he defeats our sort of guy who probably will be not long for this company, Ryota Chiutsun, in about 9 minutes by pinfall. This gets a 41. Kodaka gets a 56, which shows his skills. Ryota gets a 36. Decent stuff. Commentator announcing, turned off. Again, workers don't have any investment in, but we'll have to build that on our own. But still, decent debut by Kodaka. I'll have to fix his picture here eventually, if it's available. And then another debut, as Roderick Strong makes his debut here in New Japan. But he gets beat by Iizuka in about 7-8 minutes with the Blizzard Suplex. I figured this would be a little solid match. Strong gets a 46, Iizuka gets a 46. Decent match, again, to put Iizuka over and to get Strong debut. And that's a really good number, considering Strong has basically no popularity here in Japan. So, strong result here for Iizuka and strong debut for Strong. Usual, Iizuka's off his game. Match outside of, no investment, but, usual stuff, but still strong stuff. And then in our 8-man junior tag wackiness, we have Jado, Fujita, and Nakamura defeating Liger, El Samurai, Heat, and Tiger Mask 4 into 15:02 when Fujita pins Samurai with the Fujita driver. Really solid tag match, and this really match is basically Liger and Heat have some basically moments of heat between them, and eventually they start arguing, and that allows the heels, or the more heelish team to take over, and Fujita get the win here, as this gets a 67, Samurai gets a 57, Liger gets a 78, Tiger Mask 4 gets a 61, Heat gets a 63, Fujita gets a 37, Nakamura gets a 41, Jado gets a 59, and Gedo gets a 62. And post-match with quick angle where Liger and Heat sort of argue and push each other. Liger points to Heat's junior tag title and then walks away, sort of building that little, now looks like a tag title feud, as Liger of course got the big win on the last big show, so this sort of builds up that. And then in another mid-card match, we have in about that Terrible Wrestling announcement, and Murakami and Shibata get a big win as they defeat the under 30 champion Tanahashi and Yoshi in 10:31 when Murakami submits Yoshi with the oh god, I can't say that word. Anyway, you know what that submission is. This gets a 52, Yoshi gets a 31 because it's Yoshi. Tanahashi gets a 63, Shibata gets a 37, Murakami gets a 44. Murakami and Shibata still don't work well as a team, but I don't really care that much because they work well as a team in my head. And I'll take the little, but they're both MMA guys, so it makes sense they're not great in a tag team. At least that's my headcanon. But regardless, a strong win here for Murakami and Shibata, and this will lead to a match that'll be announced, basically, well, I guess it already announced for the next tour show, which is going to be Tanahashi versus Murakami. Plus, this sort of continues the Tanahashi versus the Shooter feuds, which included Suzuki, going after Tanahashi at the last show. And then, in about that decent wrestling but little heat, Kanemono and the debuting Milano Collection AT team up to defeat American Dragon and Curryman in 13:26 when Kanemono pins Dragon, Danielson with the Dragon suplex. Milano gets a 51, Kanemono gets a 66, Curryman gets a 56, Danielson gets a 60. Yeah, Milano was out there with no job, so I figured it's only and again, he was actually a long-term part of New Japan before he had that really unfortunate, I think it was an eye injury. So here, Milano debuts, becomes a member of like the cocky heels with Kanemoto, and they get the big win here on, at the opening show on Kurikan with a big debut. And then it's time for our semifinal of the match here at Kurikan, as the Pirates Guten of Norton, Nakanishi, and Sasaki get a big win over the team of Chono and the tag team champions Tenzan and Takayama in 15-16, when Norton gets the big win over Tenzan, as this gets a 75 and probably should have been our main event, but got to build stuff correctly. As Chono gets a 66, Tenzan gets a 78, Takayama gets a 67, Sasaki gets a 67, Nakanishi gets a 56, and Norton gets a 62. And post-match, Chono and Sasaki continue to brawl, as this gets a 73, as of course Chono, he may be been a dark heel, but he's still New Japan, valiant New Japan guy. Well, Sasaki, was a New Japan turncoat. And now they're brawling and fighting. This gets 73 and sort of sets things up. Of course, Sasaki has been feuding with, big time New Japan folks since he came back. And then in our main event, that was okay. Actually, this is good and actually interesting considering Tanahashi and Blue with all of the expert chemistry. But anyway, in a decent match, Nagata, who of course challenged Nakamura, and that match is set for King of Sports at the end of March. And Blue Wolf defeat Nakamura and Makabe in 1549 when Nagata pins Shinya Makabe with the wrist clutch explorer. So a big win. Of course, he doesn't pin Nakamura, but a big win for him regardless, as it gets a 63. Blue Wolf gets a 41, Nagata gets a 73, Makabe gets a 44, and Nakamura gets a 66, so about what I expected. Again, continuing that little Nakamura-Makabe team I've been doing since the beginning here. And a strong win for Nagata and Blue Wolf before they go forward. And again, the extra chemistry is another bonus. And overall, the show gets a 68, which is about what I expected for a opening show from Kurikan. But a solid show, and let's just see if there's any interesting email. I think All Japan had a big show, so we'll take a quick look at them. Now, I'm not going to focus on what the other companies are doing as much in this series as in my WCW series, but I'll still take an interesting look, especially in New Japan, in different Japanese companies, as we go along as needed. And so this loads, and we'll see if there's any interesting email. So, Troso got a blown eardrum, even though it wasn't even injuring. Noki thinks Gito. Ooh, that's hilarious considering Gito basically took over for Noki as a booker. Okay, so Kawada beats Steve Williams in a random 81. Muto and Abdullah defeat Tenru and Ogawa. Sure. Kashini defeats Miyamoto. Great Suzuki defeats Kanasuki. D-Lip around. Interesting stuff. Not their worst show, but it's probably a solid show. But, I'll actually be back in just a moment with the second show of the tour, which is going to be it was actually a pretty big show in real life, involving a world IWGP title defense, but I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to do another big defense, which you'll find out about in just a moment here in this video. So I'll be back with you in just a second, folks. Alright, it's now time for the second show of the tour, highlighted by a tag title match and a big singles main event between Master Chono and Gundan Sasaki, basically set up on the last show, live from the Rainbow Hall in beautiful Ichiban from Nagao, Japan, and a bunch of other matches to further feud and start some new ones, and a under 30 title defense between Tanahashi and Murakami after Murakami and Shibata got the win on the last show. So let's get rolling live from the Nagao Hall, where we got a beautiful. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Well, also no. Okay, that should be more people. I'm not sure what happened here. Oh, right, I thought it was a tour show. I keep forgetting. Yeah, I need to reset it for the bigger shows and set them as non-tour shows. Anyway, regardless, moving on. An abysmal match. Roderick Strong defeats Young Lion Risuki Taguchi in a solid match here. Strong got cracked ribs. He got 35. Taguchi got a 24. They don't click, which is unfortunate. Usual pre-show stuff, but solid win for Strong. As even though this gets a 20, a solid win for Strong as he gets his first win here in New Japan. Yes, I know. And then in our second match of the evening, an undercard tag match, we have the debut of Takayama Sugara, who is another guy who sort of floated around the mid-card for his Japanese Fed 2000, but he has some solid stats, so I want to see how he does here. Anyway, in about the subpar wrestling and non-existent crowd heat, Kodaka gets another win, as he and Naruse defeats Nagai and Sugara in 9:35 when Kodaka submitted Sugara. This gets a 42 overall, but Kodaka gets a 55, Naruse gets a 47, Zugara gets a 45, Nagai gets a 55, so solid stuff here. Would have been higher if they weren't all oh, shit. Yeah, no, sorry. I thought this was... Okay, that was weird. I thought for some reason it had stopped recording, even though the recording was continuing. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, as you can see, Kodaka and Nurus get the win, as I saw a little undercard win as we... Honestly, I'm just sort of throwing tag teams together to see who has some good chemistry, as then we can actually figure out a, gimmick and push for them. And then in our another tag team match, which unfortunately gets really bad ratings, a lot worse than I actually thought would pull off here. Blue Wolf, Nago, and Yesuda defeat Yano, Yoshi, and Ryota in about 10 minutes when Blue Wolf gets the pin over Yano with a lariat. This only gets a 24. Let me see here. Yano got a strained rotator cuff. Yesuda gets a 44. Nago gets a 20. Blue Wolf gets a 41. Jushin gets a 38, Yoshi gets a 34, and Yano gets a 19. So, yeah, mainly I think just the pre-show stuff, but still, not the worst show. Blue gets look impressive with a win and defeats Yano, and a big win for the rest of the team. And there we go. Nothing too over the top here, but again, just a solid match on the bottom of the card to get some people, some more in-ring time and more, overness slowly but surely. Yes, I know. Oh, well, Nago, you get the job a little bit. And then in a fun little match, and more like a way to put Suzuki over, or even though Makabe gets to look impressive here, as he fights hard against Suzuki, but eventually Suzuki locks him in that sleeper hold he does, and nowhere to go. Makabe has to tap out, not before fighting, but still 63, decent match here. Suzuki gets the big win, and Makabe gets a 49, and they've got great chemistry, which looks good for the future, but a strong win for Suzuki here, as he gets the win here on the big show in Goa. And then in another junior heavyweight match, Kanemoto, Milano, and the guy Kanemoto was teaming with before, Nakamura, defeat Takayama's 4, Inoue, and Samurai. And Milano gets a big win here, pinning Inoue. This gets a 63, Nakamura gets a 41, Milano gets a 49, Kanemoto gets a 67, Samurai gets a 52, Inoue gets a 43, and Takayama's 4 gets a 61. Solid stuff here, 63 overall, and yeah, more fun. And then in a match, honestly, just to get the shooters over a little bit, Fujita, Barnett, and Shibata defeat Legends Shoshi Fujinami and Quasi-Legend Hiro Saito in 9:48 when Fujita pins Saito with Sleeper Hold, so the Legends don't have to drop. This gets a 56 overall, Shibata gets a 45, Barnett gets a 62, Fujita gets a 59, Saito gets a 40, Fujinami gets a 45, Toshi gets a 43. Yeah, I mean, these guys I'm probably going to quietly let go after their contracts run out, just because, their usefulness even as legends is not that great, and if I need to put them on a bottom of the card, Battle Royal for a big dome show, I can just sign them to, temporary contracts. Regardless, big win here for the shooters, and post-match, Fujita is continuing to attack and goes after the legends when Bob Sapp makes the save and starts fighting with Fujita once again, just like what happened at the big show, and it looks like Bob Sapp is targeting Fujita, and that'll be a big match, at least to a certain section of the fan base, as we build towards King of Sports. As Sapp also gets to look like a babyface, fighting for the legend Shosu and Fujinami. As it gets 62, not bad considering the crowd doesn't actually like angles. And moving forward, in our under 30 title defense, Hiroshi Tanahashi gets the big win over Murakami in 13-11 by pinfall. Tanahashi makes defense number 3 of his under 30 championship. And just a solid, straightforward win for Tanahashi. Murakami gets to look good, kicking the shit out of Tanahashi. But Tanahashi eventually fights back from underneath, does the whole big face fire thing, and gets the big win here, hitting the high fly flow, I imagine, and getting the big pinfall victory. Again, Tanahashi, I mean, this is basically Tanahashi's vanity championship. I don't even imagine who he could drop it to anytime soon. But again, perfectly solid win. But anyway, big win for Tanahashi as he gets the victory here. And then in our match, I think is third from the top, we get a heavyweight and junior heavyweight team up. As in about that great team, decent wrestling, Nagata and Liger get the big win over Nakamura and Heat. The way I built it is not Nagata and Liger true born New Japan guys. Well, Nakamura and Heat at least have some sort of kind of quasi connection to the more Inoki MMA style stuff. So there you go. That's my reason for teaming up. Even though they're all solid New Japan people. But I think basically how these matches always go. Nakamura gets some solid hits on Liger. Nagata throws around Heat, but eventually Liger gets a big win over the junior heavyweight champion with the sheer drop brainbuster. As it gets a 76, Liger gets a 76, Nagata gets a 78, Heat gets a 61, and Nakamura gets a 67. And then in our semi-main event, now with good heat and decent wrestling, Norton and Nakanishi get the pinfall victory over our tag team champions Tenzan and Takayama in 11:38 when Nakanishi pins Takayama with the Hercules cutter, and Norton and Nakanishi, half of the Pirates Gundan, win the IWGP tag team titles. This gets a 73. Norton and Nakanishi get a 67-57 respectively as they have some chemistry teaming together. Tenzan gets a 73, and Takayama gets a 65. And post-match, post-match, celebrate, and there's a little bit of tension between Takayama and Tenzan. And then, in our final match, and about that good heat in decent wrestling, Chono defeats Sasaki in 2003 by pinfall with a shining Yesuda kick. Really solid match, only slowed down with the fact that these guys aren't super, they're a little bit, slowing down. Chono's, delaying because of ability and low morale, which I should probably just pay him off, but, what can you do? But a big one here, as this gets 77, or 72 rather, Chono gets a 66, Sasaki gets 67, and then post-match, out comes Tenryu to basically challenge Chono for King of Sports. At least, well, actually what happens here is Chono and Tenryu basically throw shots, and eventually it would be announced that King of Sports will be a big 6-man battle between the Pirates Gundan and Chono and 2 partners of his choice. And there we go. And a solid show here. Probably would have been better if I put it as a actual regular show. Shit happens, what can you do? Let's see if there's any interesting news. And then if not, we'll see you when it comes to the next tour show that I'm going to be highlighting. Again, it's first, there's 2 big shows in a row, but then there's lots of build up to the end. But also we'll get to see if there's anything interesting. Let's see here. Okay. Interesting? Interesting? Also, yeah. That's very interesting to me, for obvious reasons. Strong injured. Inoki, yeah, Chono thinks you're not wrong, but also Norton is old, and hey, he's your former NWO guy. Tell him. Anyway, I'll be back in just a second with the next big tour show that I want to show you guys. I'll be back with that in just a moment. Alright, and now time for our third show that I'm going to show you on the tour. I think and actually going over things going to happen is I'll show you this match. I'll show you this show on the tour. I'll show you the final show before the actual King of Sports show, and then we'll do the King of Sports show looking at the lineups. But go as a quick overview of what's been happening on the tour since last thing you guys saw, which was this show at the Rainbow Hall. We had a show in Chiba at Nagata, where the highlights were Danielson defeating Goto, Yano, Makabe, and Nakamura defeating Kodaka, Narusu, Nagai. Blue and Tanahashi came over to defeat Azuka and Burnett from the Shooters to further the Suzuki feud. Kanemoto and Milano AT defeating Tiger Mask 4 and Hiroto Inoue, continuing their push. And we have Nagata and Yoshimura in the main event, defeating Murakami and Fujita in a little match to put over Nagata. Then in the match from Kufu Hall, we had Kodaka and Osoma teaming up, but having no chemistry. We had Dragon Curryman defeating Tiger Mask 4 and Rotaro in a 60. We had Tanahashi and Tashiri Goto, the veteran, defeating Shibata and Azuka, again to continue the shooter feud, with Liger defeating Jado in a special singles match. We had Pirates Gundan teaming up of Norton, Nakanishi, and Sasaki defeating Takayama and Choten in a build-up of the undercard, of the upper mid-card Chono versus Pirates Gundan feud. We had Nakamura and Makabe then teaming up to defeat Nagata and Blue Wolf, of course, in the main event feud, and then we had a showdown between the 2 main eventers. There we go. Then we had Roderick Strong returning after an injury, winning a squash. We had Kodaka teaming up with Naruse to win a tag match, with Suzuki defeating Nagai in a very, very solid undercard match for Suzuki. We had Nui Heat and Tiger Mask, sort of the undercard junior babyface team, defeating Liger, Samurai, and Goto in a 65. With Fujita defeating Saito in a match to put over for Fujita. We had Nagata defeating Makabe in a sort of match to put Nagata over, a solid mid-card guy. With Milano Connection AT and Nakamura team up to defeat Gedo and Jado, and then we had Shibata and Burnett defeating Blue Wolf and Takayama in a phenomenal match over the Shooters, and we then Shoten teaming up for the first time in a while to defeat Sasaki and Nakanishi in a fun little match, which should have drawn better, but I forgot to set up as a bigger show. Well, also I undercard. Then in our last show before the show tonight, we had a bunch of tag matches basically where I just sort of put some people together just to see if I could get some honestly, just see if I get some any random chemistry and see if there was just any interesting teams. I was main evented by Chono going over Nakanishi in the continuation of the Chono versus the Pirates Gundan feud. But we got a couple big matches here tonight, as we've got let's see here. We got Yamamoto's return after being out for a little bit because of injury. We got Jado versus Milano Connection AT in a junior tag match preview. We had American Dragon Crayman facing Koji Kanemoto and Nakamura. Also, just correctly set that up match. Let me Yeah, I don't want these two going right after each other, but then actually, yeah, that's actually fine. Then we have Tanahashi and Blue Wolf teaming up once again to take on Suzuki and Shibata and start another preview of the big match happening between Tanahashi and Suzuki that's been officially announced. Then we have Liger versus Tiger match, Bob Sapp versus Josh Barnett in a build-up for the Sapp Fujita match. And we have Team Nakamura versus Team Nagata in an elimination match. And then we have the main event of Chono, Tenzan, and Takayama teaming up one more time to face on Pirates Gundan. And in matches that would be officially announced at this point for the big show, we have Takayama versus... Oh, nope, that's actually not true. We have Nakamura versus Nagata. We have Tanahashi versus Suzuki. We have Heat versus Liger. Sapp versus Fujita. And another match, which I'll set up here in a little bit. But let's get moving to the actual show. And we're live from the beautiful Yokohama National Stadium 2 in Tokyo. So we open up with Inoue going over Enzawa. This is a 27. Inoue gets a 41. As I gets a 23. Decent little match, like nothing super special, but still just enough to put Inoue over. We have Yoshi then defeating Yanomoto in Yanomoto's return. Yanomoto gets a 26. Yoshi gets a 32. Again, just a way to get Soshi some ring time and bring Yamamoto back. And then we have Kodaka and Nagai teaming up to face on Saito and Goto. Again, Kodaka with no bad chemistry, but no good chemistry with people as they defeat the veteran team of Saito and Goto in a 38. Again, not enough. Again, Nagai gets a 54, Kodaka gets a 56, Goto gets a 37, and Saito gets a 37, and a 38 overall. Then in a 65, American Dragon and Curryman actually defeat Koji Kanemoto and Nakamura in a 65, where basically sort of like this sort of like sets up things for the future, and also in a sort of big match, and sort of like this it sets up Dragon Curryman still a strong junior tag match, and also like may set something to their future with Kanemoto like dropping the match, even though he didn't drop the fall. Screamman gets a 56, Danielson gets a 57, Nakamura gets a 41, and Kanemoto gets a 66. Then in a follow-up from that, Jado gets the big win over Milano Collection AT to get them some heat going into the junior tag title match as they get the win with quick roll-up as it gets a 59, Jado gets a 57, Milano Collection AT get a 54. And then in our sort of like big match set things up here, Suzuki and Shibata get the big win over Tanahashi and Blue Wolf in 1540 when Suzuki gets the pinfall victory, I imagine, with the Gotch Pile Driver on Tanahashi. This gets a 65, Blue Wolf gets a 43, Tanahashi gets a 66, Shibata gets a 45, and Suzuki gets a 70. And then Liger defeats Tiger Mask 4 to further put some heat on the Liger junior title match, as this gets a 72. They have great chemistry, which is interesting for the future. And Liger gets 72, Tiger Mask gets 4, gets a 58. And then Bob Sapp kills Josh Barnett in 6 minutes by pinfall. They have bad chemistry. Bob Sapp isn't that good. Josh Barnett gets a 50. And yeah. I mean, again, I'm building this all up for a specific purpose. Like, I realize Bob Sapp is not long for New Japan, but I want to get something out of him before, before I move on from him. And then, in a fun little match, in a decent match here, Nakamura, Makabe, and Nishimura get the big win over Nagata, Yesuda, and Shutsen. Honestly, that seems fine. Honestly, I imagine the final is Nagata and Makabe basically beating up on Nagata near the end. Nagata gets like sort of the flash big pin on Makabe, but then Nakamura kills him with the PK to get the pinfall victory to build up for the World IWGP title match. Shutsen got some cracked ribs, so who cares about that? And then in our main event, in a 73, Sasaki, Norton, and Nakishi defeat Takayama and Shoten when Sasaki gets the big win over Takayama with the Northern Lights Bomb. Basic story of this match is Takayama doesn't exactly get left out for dry, but they're too busy. Shoten's too busy brawling with the rest of the Pirates, but Sasaki's able to hit the Northern Lights Bomb and get the pinfall victory. And this gets a 73 overall. And the show itself gets a 70. So solid little tour show here to build things up as we move forward to the big show in a couple weeks, King Sports, along with the final show, the final build-up show, which will happen here in I think basically a week or so. I think 2 weeks or so. So let's see here. Any interesting news? Not really. Black Hat thinks Brian Jones is a star. Shitson is injured. Nothing that serious. But I'll be back in just a moment with the last build-up show and then King Sports after that. So I'll be back with you in just a moment. Alright, it's now time for basically the go-home show for King of Sports, as we've got a solid show to build it up. But before we do that, and I actually remember to set it as a normal show, even though I could set it as a lesser show, as we're set for 22,000, we're only supposed to be in a 6,000 seat building. But let me go over the show since you guys last looked at here. So we were in Kyoto because I couldn't find the right arena, as we had Fujita winning a squash match, Minoru Suzuki and Kanemoto defeating Taguchi and Tiger Mask 4, and to build up them as a tag team. Barn and Zuka won a squash over Nusi and Nagai. Makabe defeated Goto in a unfortunately not that great match. Let's see here. We had Heat defeating El Samurai to get over Liger's partner. We had a 6-man putting over Gito and Jado. Then we had Nagata team with Yamamoto defeat Nakamura and Goto in a battle of our main eventers with a young lion or two. And a 63, and then main event, and basically the push for basically these like shows, I imagine, is basically all the people in the big 8-man tag. I'll go over after this build-up show at King of Sports in various singles matches. So we had Takayama Norton in 68. The next night, also in Hiroshima, we had Makabe defeating Roderick Strong. We had Barnett and Zuka winning a squash over Blue Wolf and Asaba Kodaka. We had Liger defeating Wataru Noe to put him over again, one of Heat's partners. Shibata and Murakami defeat Yoshi and Yesuda in a bad match. Tanahashi teamed up with Nagai to defeat Nishimura and Maruse just to see how they did as tag partners. We had Gato and Jiro and Anzawa defeat Kanemoto, Monokashi, and Takamura in a big win for the junior tag teams. And then Nagata teamed with Yamamoto to defeat Nakamura and Nagato and Kanyushin of the main eventers team with Young Lions in 62. And then in our main event, Sasaki gets the big win over Tenzan in 74. And then we had Zugara defeating, going to a draw with Inoue in a 34, Korean defeating Goto in a 30. Then we get Minoru Collection AT and Nakamura teaming up to defeat Gito and Anzawa in an interesting match. We had Kodaka and Makabe teaming up to defeat Yesuda and Yoshi. We had Heat defeating Fujita. We had Izuka and Suzuki of the shooters defeating Urusei and Nagao. With Nakamura getting a big win over Blue Wolf. And then we had Fujita, Murakami, and Shibata defeating Nishimura, Saito, and Goto just to win them over. Unfortunately, the match was probably too far up the card. And then we had Chono defeating Norton in a big match. And then finally, we had in Chubo at Hamamutsu, we had Dragon Curryman defeating Anzawa and Goto. We had Ornament winning a basically squash over Nagai. Fujita team with Gito and Jiro defeat Kanemoto, Takamura, and Milano. And then we had Takayama defeating Urusei. Then we had a 10-man tag where basically team shooters defeated Tanahashi, Blue Wolf, Kodaka, Yoshi, and Yesuda. We had Noe, Heat, and Tiger Mask defeated Liger, El Samurai, and Arc Strong. We had Nakamura, Makabe, and Yamamoto defeat Nagata, Nishimura, and Taguchi. And the main event, Tenzan defeated Nakanishi. So fun matches. And then, as you notice, the what I can call it, basically the two sides basically went 2-2 in singles matches, and then we got one more match after live from the beautiful Memorial Park Gym in Amagati. Yeah, I can't say words. So let's start things out. We start out with basically an opening match as Tiger Mask goes over Goto in about 7 minutes with the Tiger Suplex hold. Again, just a quick squash win to put Tiger Mask 4 over and gets the Young Lion some more in-ring time. And 46. Then in a match that was unfortunately not that good, Azuka defeats Goto in 9 minutes with a brutal suplex. Gets only a 36 as these guys aren't over enough. Azuka gets a 55. Goto gets a 31. Yeah, a match outside the pre-show business, I get it. But not the end of the world. Azuka seemed off his game, unfortunately. Then we have in a interesting match as American Dragon and Curryman face off against El Samurai and Yamamoto. But El Samurai actually gets the pin here because honestly, I've been sort of using him as a dropper. But just to build him up a little bit, he gets the win here to remain dangerous as he defeats Curryman. As this gets a 59. Curryman gets a 64, he also gets a 64, Yamamoto gets a 25, and El Samurai gets a 58. And then in a match just to basically put the shooters over, Barnett and Murakami defeat Yoshi and Yesuda in about 9 minutes. Murakami submits Yoshi with the Juga Gamate, I don't know how to say it, 56. Not a terrible match actually. Like Barnett's decent, Murakami's okay, and these guys, like, honestly, as long as, like, I'm not going to push them, but they're useful as they're decent jobbers stars, basically, and can fill out a show lineup on a tour. So not, like, terrible or anything, but not great either. Now we're finally building up things as in a about that subpar wrestling Little Heat, Kanemoto, Takamura, Milano Collection AT and TFK Zugara defeat Fujita, Strong, and Gedo and Jado in 6:15-2 when Milano gets Fujita in a quick little roll to get the pinfall victory. I imagine like Gedo and Jado fighting with Milano and Kanemoto for most of the match, but the Milano Collection AT gets a big win a day before their junior tag title shot, as this gets a 59, Strong gets a 52, Fujita gets a 38, Jado gets a 62, Gedo gets a 53, Zugara gets a 39, Milano gets a 66, Takayama gets a 46, and Kanemoto gets a 65. Strong is getting better as a gimmick. Takayama was slowed by injury, but he's still wrestling because it's not like nothing serious, and again puts him over a little bit. And then, this was actually shockingly good. Oh, right, because of the chemistry. Okay. So, yeah, about that decent wrestling match. Tanahashi and Blue Wolf get the big win over Suzuki and Shibata a day before Tanahashi faces off with Suzuki. When Tanahashi gets the big win over Shibata, this gets a 66, Shibata gets a 49, Suzuki gets a 71, Blue Wolf gets a 47, and Tanahashi gets 68. But after the match, Suzuki slips in, kick, wham, gosh pile driver on Tana to give him a little bit of heat before the big match in a day at King of Sports, as this gets a 68. Then we go to our next match, which is another match to set up the big junior title match, as Heat and Inoue defeat Liger and Taguchi in 13 minutes when he gets the big pin over Taguchi. And that should have been a submission, so let's pretend that's submitted. This gets a 65. Heat gets a 62. Inoue gets a 41. Liger gets a 79. Taguchi gets 34. Not bad. The post-match, Heat keeps Taguchi in the hold, but Liger breaks it up, and they start fighting before basically they face off, and Heat points to the belt, and Liger points back at him, and basically building up. It's going to be Heat Liger for the belt at King of Sports. And then in our semifinal, we had Heat, Nagata, and Kodaka getting the big win over Nakamura and Naruse in 13:59, but Nagata actually locks Nakamura in the Nagata lock and gets the submission victory. A big win over the IWGP champion just a day before King of Sports, as this gets a 71. Naruse gets a 48, Nakamura gets a 66, Nagata gets a 79, and Kodaka gets a 58. But post-match, there's a stare down, to build up the big match in a day at King of Sports. Can Nakamura get beats, a New Japan stalwart, or will Nagata win back the title after his very long reign? And then in our main event, which unfortunately was not that great because of not selling, Sasaki locks Takayama in the strangled Gamma hold and gets the submission hold in about 15 minutes. Big win for Takayama, as Takayama gets 67, Sasaki gets a 71, but then of course things break down all to hell as everybody involved in the big 8-man tag in a King Sports comes out the brawl to build things up. As it gets 69, and overall we get a 69. So solid stuff. And now let's see here if there's any email, and I'll go over the final lineup for the show as we move forward. As this loads up, survey says, still loading. There we go. Let's see here. Any interesting mails? Let's see here. Nakamura relocates. That's cool. Yeah, nothing of note, but let me just go to my pre-booking, show you guys the announced lineup, as there's other matches, obviously, but nothing super announced, or at least announced enough I want to put as pre-booking. So, of course, in our main event is Nakamura versus Nagata for the title. Then we have a big 8-man, basically what's being pushed as sort of a no rule street fight, as Chono, Tenzan, Takayama, and Blue Wolf take on the Pirates Gundan team of Sasaki, Tenryu, Norton, and Nakanishi. Then we have Tanahashi versus Suzuki, Heat versus Liger for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title, and Sapp versus Fujita. Also, the junior tag titles of Gedo and Jado versus Milano Collection AT, and Koji Kanemoto, but I forgot to book it. But hey, we still have enough matches if I do it to King Sports to get no penalties. So, fun stuff. But I'll be back in a second with that big show. Of course, those won't be the only matches on the show. I'll be back with that in just a moment. Alright, folks, it's now time for King Sports. After a few build-up shows, which I hope have been interesting, we're off to the actual show. We've got a total of, let's see here, what's that? We got a total of 12 matches on the show, a little over 3 hours. Probably, honestly, Could push things, could take one or two of these off the show, but I wanted to figure out some things, and on the undercard, hold things out, and just imagine some of the stuff like being your typical New Japan pre-show stuff. But let's get rolling with the show. I put it at Budokan. It should be at Budokan, but Budokan only has 5,000 people, won't show up 10,000. I'll go in the game and edit that in a second. But anyway, or actually, let me double check that. Okay, Tokyo only has 5,000, so even though this should be from Budokan, because that's 10,000, but regardless, what can you do? Anyway, let's go on to the actual show here. Let's get rolling. From the start, we got El Samurai defeating Sugawara, who's our undercard junior heavyweight that we signed, who's actually pretty decent in the ring, but will probably be just a mid-card, lower card guy. I might push him later on, but honestly, I was going to put Sugawara over, but El Samurai was furious, and I've sort of jogged him out a bit, so give him the win here. Decent win. Samurai gets a 58, Sugawara gets a 42, 53 overall. Big solid win for Samurai. And then in our next match, we had Goto and Kodaka in the never-ending quest to get Kodaka, who's another guy who's slightly part of our mid-card partner, see if there's any chemistry. But they defeat Strong and Yamamoto in a decent little undercard match. This gets a 39 because of lack of non-pre-show workers. Yamamoto gets a 26, Strong gets a 52, Goto gets a 34, and Kodaka gets a 59. So a solidly decent win for Kodaka and Goto. And we'll see what Kodaka does with the next set of shows. And then, this was not great. Anyway, in a match on another card, Fujita, who we signed also to be part of the junior heavyweight division, who's a younger guy, defeats Nakamura in a bit of an upset in 9:56 with a defeated driver. This gets a 34. Fuji gets a 39. Nakamura gets a 41. Again, pre-show stuff, but hopefully, that'll change. Decent one for Fujita, though. Nakamura has been sort of a big part of the Kanemoto Milano team, but Fujita gets the win here in the other junior heavyweight singles match. And then, honestly, I should have expected this. But again, this is sort of why I probably should have put some of this in the pre-show, but hey, gotta roll with what you got, right? Anyway, Shibata and Murakami get the big win here over Saito and Goto, our older, basically the mid-2000 versions of the dads, as Shibata gets the win with the PK kick. This gets a 35, Murakami gets a 51, Shibata gets a 43, Goto gets a 31, Saito gets a 40. Still no chemistry for Murakami and Shibata, but the other members of the shooters had some stuff to do tonight, but still pre-show stuff, but not the end of the world. Continue to build them up. And then in our, basically a junior heavyweight number one contenders match, even though it's not stated as such, Dragon Curryman get the big win over the team of Taguchi and Anzawa, and Tiger Mask 4 and Inoue in 12:55 when Curryman pins Anzawa with the best moonsault ever. This gets a 54. Curryman gets a 65. Daniel gets a 53. Anzawa gets a 13 mainly because he doesn't have stamina to do this match, but oh well. Taguchi is 31, Inoue gets a 34, and Tiger Mask gets a 63. So solid win for American Dragon and Curryman as they set themselves up for the next contender to the tag titles. Junior heavyweight tag titles, that is. And then in another card match, Barnett and Azuka get the big win over Nakamura's block partner a lot of the time, Makabe, and veteran Nishimura. This gets a 61. Azuka submits Nishimura in a big win for Azuka, as Azuka gets a 60, Barnett gets a 64, Nishimura gets a 58, and Makabe gets a 49. One thing is I'm just going to push Barnett's experience up because, unfortunately, he's still showing as a young lion. I just need to fix that. And then, in our junior heavyweight tag title match, Mano Collection AT and Kanemoto defeat Gedo and Jado in 1711 when Kanemoto pins Gedo with the Dragon Suplex hold. I can imagine this being a back and forth match of basically two heelish teams doing heel work on each other. Eventually things build up, but Kanemoto, one of the best junior heavyweights of the 90s, along with the newcomer Milano, gets the big win here as they get the win over Gedo and Jado. I need to change Milano's picture here, I think, because that's a little older picture from when he was announcer. Anyway, big win, 64. Decent match. Kanemoto gets a 67, Milano gets a 68, Gedo gets a 59, Gedo gets a 53. Gedo was tiring towards the end. And let me see here. Was there anything else? Maybe booking details. Gedo was kept strong because he was upset about losing, but hey, what can you do? And then moving on to our next match. A decent match. Well, actually, honestly, this is might be our match of the night considering everybody else's overness and such. Maybe the 8-man Wildman tag. I don't know. Regardless, a great match, a slowly built up match. Suzuki does his pancrase MMA style stuff, and as long as there's a little bit of brawling and kicking Tanahashi around. Tanahashi plays underdog babyface, fights back, but eventually Tanahashi is able to hit high fly flow, gets the big pinfall victory over Suzuki. In 77, Tanahashi gets a 68, Suzuki gets a 74. And then we have our big match, which honestly, this is a lot better than I thought it would be, mainly because they had pretty good chemistry. But with a good heat and decent wrestling, Heat gets the huge win over the New Japan legend Liger in about 15 minutes by pinfall, and Heat makes defense number 2 of his junior heavyweight title. A huge win for Heat here, getting the win over Liger. This gets a 75, like I said, because of the good chemistry. Heat gets a 63, Liger gets a 77, and there's a bit of tension, but finally Liger extends his hand, and there's a handshake. But out of nowhere, sliding to the ring are Minoru Fujita from earlier tonight, and Taiji Ishimori, making his New Japan debut after being Toryumon, and they just beat the crap out of Heat and Liger, and then escape through the crowd before the rest of the juniors come down to make the save. As Ishimori makes his debut here, Fujita is now, I guess, his partner in crime, and they make a huge impact attacking a New Japan legend and the current junior heavyweight champion. 55, decent little match there. And yeah, Ishimori I signed basically at the beginning of the year, but I wanted to figure out a decent way to bring him in, and I figured this is a decent way to build and bring and make and actually push Fujita a bit. So there we go. And yeah, we had this match. It was what it was. And oh right. And yeah, that's another thing I'm gonna have to do is figure out Saps as a young lion as well. I'll just basically push his experience up, because he wasn't treated as a young lion in Japan, obviously. But this is just your undercard and your upper card to get the more Inoki style fans something, and they just beat the crap out of each other. But Bob Sapp gets the win over Fujita in about 5 minutes. This gets a 45, unfortunately, as they don't click, which is interesting. And yeah, big win for Sapp though. And then in our semi-main event, which gets a 69, which is a little bit less than, unfortunately, I wanted there to be. I was hoping for mid-70s here, but this is just and basically I put it as a brawling match because Street Fight was not good for the product, but come on, we've all seen some wild stuff from mid-2000s New Japan. But in a big win, Pirates Gundan get the big win. Sasaki, Tenryu, Norton, and Nakanishi get the win over Takayama, Wolf, Chono, and Tenzan in about 20 minutes, as Nakanishi pins Takayama with the Hercules cutter after he gets after basically what happens here is Tenzan actually goes for the moonsault he hit every so often. But the wild brawl. It looks like Nakanishi's down, but then Tenryu comes from behind, hits his big power bomb. Tenzan is aware of it. Tenzan hits the moonsault on Takayama, is shocked, gets thrown to the outside. Nakanishi comes in, hits the cutter on Takayama. 1, 2, 3. Big victory for Pirates Gundan. SS gets a 69. Bluef gets a 39 just because he was the 8th man. Takayama gets a 66. Tenzan gets a 76. Chono gets a 70. Nakanishi gets a 57. Norton gets a 65. Tenryu gets a 46 because he's old. And Sasaki gets 71. Sasaki and Bluef wore off their game, unfortunately. But a huge victory for Pirates Gundan. They go to the back, but then as the other team is basically, getting, recovering, Takayama hits Tenzan with a huge German suplex, taking him out, and then walks to the back, seemingly ending their team. And yeah, I decided to do this when I figured out that the mod was bad and Takayama and Tenzan were never actually the tag champs. But a big turn on as Takayama takes out Tenzan and looks to now be on his own at 72. And now it's main event time. And okay, wow, really, it turns out Yuji Nagata, good at wrestling. But yeah, I imagine this just being a bomb, Nakamura always trying to get ready for the Kanasha, or trying to lock in submission, but Nagata fighting back, trying to get his own hold in. But in the end, Nakamura shows he is truly the rising star in professional wrestling in Puroresu, as he takes out Nagata with the Kanasha and gets the 1, 2, 3, 81 overall. 70 for Nakamura. Nagata is 77. And, they're both standing up. And it looks like they're going to, go for, a handshake when Bob Sapp's music comes out. And he comes out and basically, challenges Nakamura. And it looks like that's our next big match is Nakamura versus Bob Sapp, as the next big show was set for the Tokyo Dome. And again, as this first part of 2004, before I really shift things, I'm in reality, they already booked the Tokyo Dome at that point. So we need a big Tokyo Dome style match. In 2004, Bob Sapp was a draw. Even though it's not quite in the game, I can sort of finagle things. But here, a huge match, Nakamura versus Sapp for the IWGP title. And overall, the show itself gets a 77. And we're still losing popularity because that makes sense for New Japan at this point. But still, a big match. So Yuji Nagata, you did great. Heat, you actually did well. And other match, oh right, Suzuki. Great match. Let's just see if there's any interesting news, and then we'll go actually to the end of the month here and see what pops up. Loading. Okay. Yeah, so decent buy rate, and oh yeah, two things to note. Both Naruse and Shibata took MMA fights, so they'll be gone in about 46 days. So, and then All Japan actually had their big show as Kawada defeated Oguan in 85, Suzuki defeated Keiya, Jin won in a match 60, so they actually did a little bit better than us, which is unfortunate, but I mean, they're not totally terrible at this point. But yeah, big win for, solid match here. So if we look at our actual size here, so if we look at our track progress, again, we were stupidly over, so we're going to have to lose a bit before we start going over again. So let's see here. So titles, again. Nakamura is still the heavyweight champion. Junior heavyweight champion is still Heat. Junior heavyweight tag champs are Milano and Kanemoto. Tag champs are still Norton and Nakanishi. And under 30 is still Tanahashi. If we look at our roster, and we keep things to major stars, still none. Which again, is probably why we're losing popularity. Star-wise, those. So we got Liger, who's still stupidly over. He's lost a couple points because he's dropped. We got Chono, who again is he did that big job in January, but since then he's been great. And we got Nagata, who's still stupidly over. The fight, he's done a couple big jobs, but that's sort of the point of these jobs to get him over. And then if we go to our well-knowns, so Bob Sapp, after a couple big wins, is actually totally, I think 75 is reasonable for his actually popularity at the time, which is fine. But again, I'm going to go in and change his years of experience, add his basically MMA experience, because that was basically what it's being built on. Tanahashi is slowly being built up. Tenzan's actually, lost a point, but is still getting over. Again, this is going to be a lot of this because just these guys, I mean, honestly, I think this actually makes sense for the game, is these guys are actually more over than they should be, but that makes sense because, Inoki-ism sort of killed their drawing power and everything else. So Kanemoto's actually, I think, has built up a lot. Yeah, Kanemoto's up about 3-4 points. Nakanishi, I think, is a guy who's, Nakanishi's up 6 points. Minoru, my friend, is down a point, which makes sense. Nakamura, Nakamura's, up. Yeah, he's another couple. He should be up in the main event picture or up in the bigger star picture here in a second. And Takayama is at the same. Let me see if there's anybody else we need to really take a look at. Recognizable. Let me see here. Heat, after that big win over Liger, gained at 5 points, so that makes sense. Makabe is actually slowly getting. Well, okay, no, actually he's not because he lost a couple. Let me see here. If we look at unimportant, let's see here. Anybody of note who's getting there? Oh yeah, where does Ishimori starts at a 27, which is unfortunately not that great. But, you know, I think it'll be fun to build him up as a guy. Let me see, is there anybody else of note that I want you guys? And Fujita's also like pretty deep, not quite super over, but he'll get there. Along with collection 18, let me see, how quick has I built him up? So about, yeah, he's got up about like 7 to 10 points. So that's decently. So if he gets a couple another big wins and does well, he should get decently over. And Shibata, he'll be slowly built up. But hey, that's it. Next up, you know, we'll be going to the next Tokyo Dome show, which was I think called Excess or something like that. So that'll be interesting. That's in I think the start of May. So the build up tour will mostly be in most of April. And then you know, and then after that, it'll be on to the Junior League, Super Juniors, and G1. So that'll be fun, and we'll show more of the show. I think in both sense, I might do basically half and half since I'll be showing most of the cards. I'll just have to figure that out. But hey, not terrible. And we're getting things in gear for actually building things up. So if you enjoyed this, go to like, comment below what you're liking or not liking, and subscribe to the channel for more TEW 2020 content. And also, I might have something interesting up either next week or this weekend that's not TEW related, but is also simulation related. But hey, I also have the year in review for WCW 2004. But that's it for now, so talk to you later, and adios. Have a good one.